Thank you, Eleanor. So welcome everybody. This is our final session in Parent to Parent Real Talk from Real Thrivers, Breaking the Cycle. I'm so happy that all of you could join us. If you would like to see our previous ones, we will be sharing the link through our chat messages as well as on one of the last couple of slides. So just a reminder to everybody, the National American Indian and Alaska Native Childhood Trauma Treatment Service and Adaptation Center is supported by a grant from the SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The content of this event is the creation of the presenters, and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian and Alaska Native NCTSN. So this is our land acknowledgement created by some of our peers, Ella Driscoll, Keely Driscoll, and Sean Bear. I'm going to give everybody a couple minutes to read through it, and then we will get started. Thank you all for taking a moment to read this our land acknowledgement. So following today's events, you will receive an email with the links to the presentation slides and the recording. And you'll also get any resources or links shared in the chat box, as well as a link to our evaluation survey that will both be sent. That will be sent at the end of this presentation. So for now, I'm going to pass it off to Teresa to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening for everybody on here. I'm glad to see so many faces on here today. My name is Teresa Brunton. I am the co-director for the National American Indian and Alaska Native Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, K through 12 School Supplement, and the co-director for the National American Indian and Alaska Native Child Traumatics Trust Initiative Category 2. I'm an enrolled member of the Coharie tribe and descendant of the Lumbee tribe. I live from the Meskwaki settlement with my husband and my granddaughter, and I am very passionate about what we have today and what our panelists are going to offer. Thank you.
And then hi everyone, you've already briefly heard from me. My name is Liz Sadoff. I am the program coordinator for the National American Indian and Alaska Native Childhood Trauma TSA. I'm a recent graduate of the Masters of Public Health program in Community and Behavioral Health at the University of Iowa, and I'm also a certified health education specialist. And then I will hand it off to Eleanor, our amazing GRA.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eleanor Witt. I am a master's student at the University of Iowa. I'm getting my master's degree in school counseling. I work on the trauma grant with Teresa and Liz, and I am so excited for you all to hear from our panelists today. They truly have incredible stories, and every time I think they won't be able to top themselves from the last session, and they always do. So welcome, and we're glad you're here. Cynthia, on to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia Goslin. I am an enrolled member of the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas. I am also Muskogee Creek. I am a mother of 3, and I am a provisionally licensed drug and alcohol counselor. I am also an advocate, and with that, I will pass it.
Raquel Ramos, Nutsay Namana. Hi, I'm Raquel Ramos, and I am a member of the Comanche Nation. This week is Comanche Fair Week, so it's going to be really exciting. First time that we've been able to come together as a nation in 3 years, so really looking forward to that. I work in the field of prevention. Currently, I work for the National Indian Education Association as a prevention specialist, and I just look forward to hearing the other panelists' stories and strategies, and thank you all for being here. I'll pass it to Listina.
Good afternoon, relatives. My name is Lestina Salmerdassi, and I am an enrolled member of the Siston, Wahpeton, Dakota, Oyate Nations of North and South Dakota. And I currently work as a behavioral health counselor, and I am also a certified advocate and a project coordinator for a program that addresses sex and human trafficking in the American Indian and Alaska Native populations. And I will pass it to Melanie.
Aho Kiskichi Nadeshi. Hello, everyone. I'm Melanie Johnson. I am Sac and Fox on my mother's side and Mexican on my father's side. I really been thankful to go through this series with you all. I hope that things that we say today bring it all together. I am also the director for our Whole Child Initiative with the National Indian Education Association. And on my side job, I'm a certified prevention specialist, and I've been working alongside with Raquel for a number of years. So thank you all. I will pass it on to Ronnie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ronald Wakini. I'm half Comanche, half not. I am the Associate Director for the Oklahoma Association on Problem Gambling and Gaming, located in Norman, Oklahoma, and I am a licensed alcohol and drug counselor with the state of Oklahoma. Just happy to be here. Yay. Have a good day.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ronalda Tomor Rito. I am Diné. On my mother's side, I am Hushklishni, Mud Clan, and on my father paternal clan is Nashesha Diné, which is the Bear enemy people. I am really glad to be here, and I'm glad you are all here. And it's such a privilege to be here. And I work with children with disabilities and have been advocating for our Native American children and families within special education. I try to help families not only learn the education process, but my other balance in all of that is also doing healing circles and hoping to incorporate those within schools to create balance. So I'm glad you guys are all here. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. So today is our final session of Parent to Parent. And the overall goal of this series has been to acknowledge the past, present, future, and strengths of Native parents as we come together to encourage all Native parents to do the same to heal collectively and break the cycle. So if you would like, you can visit one of the links within our chat and view our previous sessions. And that was Deconstructing the Years That Made Us, and then the Cycle of Parenting. We're currently reviewing the third session, and that will be posted on our YouTube in the next couple of weeks, as well as this session. We really appreciated all of the insight of all of our panelists. They have amazing stories, and they continue to teach me to be strong, as well as recognize my healing journey that I am on as a person, and as well as the community that we are in. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Cynthia to get us started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Parent to Parent. This is our final session, and I'm just excited to be here with you guys. I was excited to talk about the healing and connectedness as we go through this. So this is one of my favorite pictures. This is my mom and my girls at the Shakopee Powwow in Minnesota. This was taken a week after celebrating her 1 year of sobriety last month. Next slide, Liz. So I talked quite a bit about my journey through this. So I want to go back a little bit and just kind of recap some of that. Let's see, we talked about the tough stuff, and I want to talk more about my healing through this. So this picture was taken the last time that I saw my children before I was sentenced to prison. During this time, I did not know what was going to happen in court. While I was out on bond, I was introduced to some amazing people. I was first shown unconditional love, and all the walls that I had built up with inside myself really just started chipping away, started to crumble. I feel like this is really where my beginning started. Next slide, please. So on this one, this kind of shows a little bit of a timeline. So the picture on the left is when I was in prison. This is when I first got arrested, before I went in. So I was really at a loss at this point. I lost my kids. I didn't know what to do at that time. My son was 10 years old. My daughter was 6 months old, and I was pregnant with my third. When I got in, I had my daughter. I started taking every self-betterment class that was offered. I went to different parenting classes. I kept my daughter with me throughout my sentence. I had a couple visits with my son during this time. Since they were in another state, it was kind of hard for them to get back and forth. So I was only able to have a few visits. I was not able to visit my other daughter. She was with one of my friends at the time. Throughout my sentence, I completed the restorative justice program. This is where I was able to identify my part in my crime, to accept my accountability, and to also make amends. This pushed me into, I feel like, another layer of healing. I learned about the pain I caused myself. I learned about the pain that I caused my kids, my family, my community, my tribe, and generations. I successfully completed the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People program. And honestly, I just got real with myself. I surrendered my old ways of thinking, and I took a look into a deeper look into my behavior and my choices that led me to this point. Next slide, please. So this picture, there are these 2 pictures. I kind of had to tell you a little story about this briefly. The arrow over on the left side is pointing to the nursery at the prison where I was with my daughter. I remember coming out here in this fenced area and daydreaming about getting out. I would look outside these bars and I would just sit out there and I would think about, would I have a job? Would I have a car? Would I have an apartment when I got out? Just kind of daydreaming about what life might be like. At that time, I was not able to dream of what my current reality is. These pictures were taken in 2017. I was already released. I started working in human services and was asked to go back to the prison during the community engagement workshop and speak to the women about the recovery program that I attended. I had many feelings through this. I was anxious, I was excited, but I was also scared. I was greeted when I first came in and I did my walkthrough and they were checking everything. I was greeted by the warden who was actually there when I did my time in prison. She took me down to the cell where my daughter and I were kept. They even still had my picture, or our picture, on the board for future moms to see that were coming in. I feel like at this point is really where I felt like it was my time to start sharing my story. Next slide. So this one is the continued growth and change within my son. So a lot has changed since the picture on the top. If you remember, if you were here listening previously, that is the first picture that I had of me and my children all together after I got out of prison. I have all my children living with me, including my nephew today. I've worked on my relationship with my son. He is my oldest. He went through the most with me as he was growing up. When he was 10, I went into prison, and now he's 20. I allowed him to be angry with me. I allowed him to work through his feelings. He has forgiven me in many ways. I continue to watch him become a young man. He's doing much better at his age than I did. He graduated high school during the pandemic. He's working full-time. He's going to school doing mechanical work right now. My relationship with him has blossomed, honestly. He comes to me and he talks to me about different things. This picture on the left is him and I at my graduation, when I graduated with my chemical dependency counseling. Next slide, please. This is my oldest daughter. When I first got out, I had to fight for my daughter in court. She was 6 months old when I was arrested, and she was 3 when I was able to actually get her back into and to be able to even see her, honestly. I missed quite a bit through that time. I've worked on my relationship with her as well in many ways. When I first got her, I would hold her so she would feel the attachment with me again. We went through therapy, and even to this day, sometimes she still struggles with some anxiety. We have different techniques that we do to ground her and to calm her breathing when she starts feeling like that. I am honest with all my kids regarding my past within their ability of understanding their age, and allow her to feel her feelings and to work through the pain that I caused. I believe that we have a good relationship. She's very happy, she's talented, she's a jingle dress dancer, she plays the trumpet, and she loves basketball. This is her and her jingle dress dance, or her regalia last year at the powwow. Next slide, please. And this is my youngest daughter. I am thankful that my youngest daughter has never seen me drunk or high in her life. I would like to say that she has not had to experience any of the hurt from my dysfunction or my addiction, but that's just not true. I'm still a work in progress. She was born while I was in prison, so her first years were behind bars. She literally learned how to walk on the yard in prison. When we first got out, she didn't know who her brother and her sister were. So it was trying to build them relationships and the dynamics of all 3 of them, her feeling like as though she's an only child. And I got to spend a lot of time with her, and then getting out, and then now she has her brother there, which is older, and then getting my other daughter into the equation. It was a lot like putting puzzle pieces together for our family. I like to describe her personality as spicy. Anytime that she comes in, she'll light up a room. She's very funny. She brings a lot of joy to our family. Next slide, please. So some things I want to share with you are my values. My values have changed from what they used to be. Some of my values is family, honesty, time, accountability, forgiveness, and to help strengthen and walk with others. While I was going through my healing, I would say the most important thing for me was having healthy relationships, having sober support to call on when I'm in need or I need someone to talk to. Another big factor was boundaries for me. My family was still in their addictions as I was going through my recovery journey. It's very important to have a safety plan or a relapse plan anytime that I would go visit them. I'd make sure that my no was no, and I was able to walk away even if I was to offend others. My sobriety is one of my most important values in life. And next slide, please. And honestly, my encouragement for you is just to reach out when you're needing help. You're not alone, and we are all here for you. We are all connected and we are all related. And I just want to say thank you for being here with me in this space. And with that, I will give it over to Raquel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Cynthia, for sharing. Let's see. I am going, oh, Liz, are you doing my screen? Okay. Oh, give me just a second. I have to redo my.
And if there are any questions for Cynthia, we're opening for questions after each section, or also at the end, we're going to have time as well. So feel free to ask any questions now or at the end. Sorry, I forgot to mention that at the beginning.
Okay. All right, so by the way, I'm Raquel Ramos. Once again, we'll be talking about breaking the cycle, healing and connectedness. So last week I told my personal story of my upbringing, my past experiences, even the dark ones that included physical and sexual abuse. You walked with me through the birth of my first child at the age of 15 and the passing of my 13-year-old son. We journeyed through my incarceration as well as what caused the positive shift in my life. So today I'm going to talk about breaking the cycle and hope that my journey will help someone today. Next slide. So when I first started in my first session, I talked about boarding schools because looking back on the boarding school error that affected my family for generations. In my healing journey, I have fought to find who I am, not only as a Native woman, but as a parent and a grandparent. Finding my identity and a sense of belonging in my family, my tribe, and my community has been key for me. Being present, even when I felt like nobody cared that I was even there, and being consistent, which has built family traditions for me and my family, with things like Christmas Eve being held at my house every year with 35 plus family members, and being committed to life as it may come, as long as I am true to myself. And then also being the change that I want my children and my grandchildren to follow. So as I look at this individual, family, tribal communities, and tribal nations, sometimes fitting in was never there, especially when it came to my past. Working in the field of prevention like I do now, I felt a lot of hardships of, what is this felon or this individual doing working with our kids? But after working in the field that I've worked in and being in recovery for 20 years, that has long since passed. People that talked harshly about me are the people that now come to me for guidance and trust with their children. Next slide. So my past is not unique or special in any way, but my voice, my honesty, and vulnerability, just like the other panelists in these sessions, is because we choose to be heard so that others don't suffer in silence. With my past and guilt and shame, that's where I was at for a long time. We are all on this healing journey together. There is a quote from The Red Road to Wellbriety that always comes to mind and that I try to live by in successes and failures, which is, the pain of one is the pain of all, and the honor of one is the honor of all. So healing our past, the past is over, its lessons are learned, it's time to release it. Don't let the past sabotage what your present and future have for you. Next slide. And here's another quote. The soul usually knows what to do to heal itself. The challenge is to silence the mind. This is so true. I used to say all the time, when I go in my mind, many, many times in the past, I would mug myself. That sounds kind of harsh, but it was kind of true, because that's when all of my self-doubts, my worries, and my fears would come to mind. So take time to listen to yourself. We are our worst critics and at times our worst enemies. There is no cookie cutter approach to parenting. There will be doubt and there will be fears. especially when it comes to the teenage years of our children, which I missed mine, but my grandchildren, they're still the same. We have to have open communication with our child, and it helps them to see that what they say is important. Set boundaries. Even with my adult children today, I have to set boundaries, and it's okay to say no. For the longest time, I wouldn't tell my kids no. I wouldn't tell my grandchildren no, because I always felt as if I owed it to them. I owed them what I missed out on. I owed them the 20 years of my addiction. And today, though, in my boundary setting, it's okay for me to tell them no. Next slide. And of course, love yourself, accept yourself, forgive yourself, and be good to yourself. Because without you, the rest of us are without a source of many wonderful things. You know, it took time to love myself. Today, I love who I am. It took time to look in the mirror, to see the person behind the image that I wasn't, but I was trying to be. It took time to forgive myself for my past hurts that not only did I cause to my children, but that I caused to my mom and my dad. But most of all, that I caused to myself. It took time to be good to myself, to know that I am okay, that I am accepted, and that I'm good enough. And also it took time. It just took time. Am I healed completely? Absolutely not. Am I on the right path? Absolutely. Because I could smile today and say, today life is good. Next slide. So there is no such thing as a perfect parent. So just be a real one. I've been in recovery for 20 years as of November 5th of this year. Okay, 19 years and some odd months, but man, I'm right there. These are my adult children. I missed out on a lot of their growing up, as I spoke about in my previous sessions, but we have healed together. Has it been easy? Externally, yes, because there's the smiles, the hugs, the laughs, the giggles. Internally, no. In the beginning, it wasn't, because of my doubt and my fear of what they would say, of the questions I would have to answer, of the truths that they would tell me. But guess what? It has happened. My kids love me, and my kids have forgiven me. And most of all, I have forgiven myself. That's my son at his wedding, and my oldest daughter on the left, and my youngest daughter on the right at my oldest granddaughter's graduation. Next slide. So don't try to be perfect. Life isn't. No one is. Use mistakes and mishaps as opportunities to grow, tolerance, and to teach. There is such good things as, there is such a thing as happy accidents, and love, 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 and listen, listen, listen. These are my kids with their families. There's one that's missing, which is my oldest grandson, but there's my son with his wife and his 3 children, my daughter with her husband and her 3 children, and then my other daughter with her husband and 5 of her 6 children. And so one of the things, and it wasn't because of me, but whenever I talked about the boarding school and the generational trauma that has affected our family for years on, today I can say that my children are with their spouses and they're raising their kids together. And so I really love that they let me be a part of their life, because they didn't have to. They chose to. And as a parent and as a grandparent, that's amazing. Next slide. And so along my journey, I'm also a sister to my 3 brothers. I'm also a wife to my wonderful husband. And I'm also a friend, because we have to have friends. To Melody, we have to have somebody that believes in us when we don't believe in ourselves.
And one of the things that I know today is that myself and my three brothers, we're the adults now. We're the elders of our family, even though I'm just 39. Hey, China. But we're the adults, but we're consistent and we're committed to our families. With me and my husband, I was telling my grandson today as we were talking, he was like, Grandma, how come you're always telling me things? I know. And I said, how come Grandpa is always saying things? I said, that's just Grandpa. He's ornery. I said, but you always have to remember is that we're your constant. We will always be your constant. He was like, well, what do you mean my constant? I said, we will always be there when you need something. We will always be there to pick you up when you fall. We will always have a home for you to come to. And we will always help you to make the right choices. And we will give you guidance whenever you feel like you have nowhere to go, no path to follow. And so I want to leave each of you with this. There is a battle of two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, lies, inferiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth. The wolf that wins is the one that you feed. I choose to feed the good today. Thank you for listening. And I'm going to hand it over to Lestina.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, again. So I really admire the pictures that I chose to display right here. The first one is a reminder to me that the only time I should ever look back is to see how far I've come. And that's significant to me because for so long I would look back with regret and remorse. And now I can look back in a healthy way and use it as motivation and courage to help me to continue to do the next right thing. And first and foremost, today I would like to give thanks to the Creator. My story is not over with. In my life, I have survived childhood abuses, complex traumatic events, PTSD, low self-esteem, being an adult child of an alcoholic addict, abandonment, self-harm, suicide attempt survivor, domestic violence survivor. I've also inflicted violence on others, incarceration, mistakes I made as a parent. I've hurt others. I've worked through addictions and toxic relationships. I am becoming the woman that I would be proud to call a friend. The journey to self-love has not been an easy road, but day by day I have made progress. I still make mistakes, but that is part of being human. My perspective has changed today. I don't regret my past because it has shaped me into the woman that I am today. I have scars that you can see and some scars that you cannot see, and both are parts of my story that have led up to where I am at today. Next slide, please. So it took me several attempts to get sober, but eventually something sank in, and I am going on 9 years of sobriety. I've attended Red Road-based treatments, 12 steps, CBT, and eclectic therapy treatments. Nothing worked until I was ready, but the seeds were planted each time I went into a treatment center or each time I talked with somebody who knew more about recovery than I did. The new people I met and surrounded myself with loved me and believed in me until I could love and believe in myself. At my low points, I did not like myself. It took recovery for me to see that I carried guilt and shame around with me and that some of it wasn't mine to carry. Eventually, I allowed others to help me to heal. Some healing came from male therapists, female therapists, traditional healers, traditional ceremonies, and prayer. I waited to enter the powwow arena until I felt like it was time. Getting back into my culture has been a journey in healing. I grew up respecting the ways, which is why I stayed away from traditional things when I was out there in my active addiction. In my mind, I associate the traditional ways with goodness and respect. And I I would like to share about the learned helplessness lifestyle that addiction imposed upon me. At a super low point, I always felt like since I was an addict or an alcoholic that I couldn't succeed in life and that I was confined into those addictions and that I wasn't ever going to amount to anything. But that was a lie that addiction told me. Next slide, please. So healing is not a linear process. For me, it probably doesn't even look as neat as that picture there. It was more like all over the place, up and down. Sometimes I would be at a really, really low point, and other times I'd be at a really high point. So some of the things that helped me were taking life one day at a time. Simple resources to help are any 12-step group, therapy, treatment centers, parenting classes, finding positive mentors, building up a sober support network, finding healthy hobbies, talking circles, ceremonies, powwows, and developing good habits. Sometimes I experienced levels of healing. You know, once I would work on something and I'd find 5 more things that I needed to work on. And so I'm not completely done with my healing process. And for me, I look at recovery as a lifelong process. Indigenous or traditional healing ceremonies are there to help you grow spiritually and understand the ways of life. Prayer is paramount. Letting things go can feel awkward, but eventually you get over it and things eventually work out the way they're supposed to. Sometimes the first thought can be the wrong thought. And I also want to say, don't give up. Life doesn't magically get better overnight. We hurt others, so don't be surprised when they don't trust your recovery. And I had to learn that with my children. And it took me many years to earn their trust, their respect, and their love back. And it's time to let go of people, places, and things that are out of your control. Next slide, please. Being teachable and open-minded helped me to realize that I don't know everything and that once I'm ready, like they say, the teacher will appear. And in my life, I've had many teachers and I've gained something good from each one of them. I've had to learn how to become a student of life in order to grow and to learn new ways of living and parenting. And I really like this quote. It says, "My story is filled with broken pieces, bad decisions, and some ugly truths, but it is also filled with the major comeback, peace in my soul, and grace that saved my life." And for me, open-mindedness consists of being open to other suggestions and realizing that others may know more about me than parenting and sobriety. And I have learned to never stop asking or learning, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. Next slide, please. So for my experience with parenting and healing after addiction and incarceration and all of those other things, I realized that the process took years. I had to rebuild trust. My relationships with my oldest 2 kids is still healing. It was a difficult process, but I didn't give up, and eventually they came around. I continue to seek help from others regarding being a healthy parent and learning how to be there for them. It is something that I will continue to work on for the rest of my life. For those of you who tuned into my previous presentation, I had my oldest 2 children when I was 16 and 17. And so parenting an adult is something that I am still learning how to do. And I mean, it's worth it. I would say don't ever give up on trying to be there for your kids and grandkids. Next slide, please. So developing healthy habits. Some of the things that I do today that bring me peace, joy, and contentment is I smudge. I practice getting cute every day whenever I can. Some days I like to just be in my sweats, but that's another story. And I try to look for the good in every day or the blessings in each day. And from what I've learned about growth is that nothing happens good within your comfort zone, and that growth is painful and it takes time. The next time that you feel unqualified to be used by God, remember this: He tends to recruit from the pit and not the pedestal. So I have learned that it can be difficult parenting older children or teenagers when their inclination is to expand their wings and fly away. I had to accept this. When I got out of prison, everything was new and foreign to me. My kids were hip on the texting thing, and I was hip and stuck in phone calls. So I had to adjust to accommodate to teenagers who preferred to text rather than the old-fashioned phone call. But then again, I also grew up with the phone being on the wall. So I always have to keep in mind, like, to adjust my level of thinking or my level of parenting to where they're at in their life too. Next slide, please. Oh, and I would just like to say a big thank you to my mother also, who stepped up when I couldn't be there. She actually raised my oldest two kids, and we basically co-parented them throughout the years, which we continue to do. So a major game changer for me was spirituality, the role of faith, hope, love, gratitude, prayer, and ceremony. I didn't experience real recovery until I focused on a relationship with the Creator God. Life is meant to be lived one day at a time. A meaningful reality was when I accepted taking things one day at a time, which was a healing process. Gratitude is an attitude, which is something I also had to learn. When I first came into recovery and learned about doing gratitude lists, I didn't even know how to spell grateful. I thought it was GREATFUL. And that's just, to me, that's just a reminder to see how far I've come. A couple of my other favorite quotes are, "You are a spirit and a body, not a body with a spirit. So making the body beautiful is fun, but making the spirit beautiful is the main goal of this life." Read that again. She changed, but not overnight like the books you read. Over years, slowly, painfully, sometimes brutally, but she did. Next slide, please. So there's a big movement about Indians in recovery, and one of their philosophies is once you get sober, you can do anything. And for me, that has rang true. And sometimes I like to reflect on the things my ancestors went through for me to be here today so that I can draw on their strength and their wisdom. So some of my visions and dreams have come to pass while in recovery. I did not think that I had what it takes to go to college and graduate, but here I am 2 degrees later and working on a third. People helped me and supported me when I wanted to quit. Helpers do exist. In the Native tradition and philosophy, we believe in spirit helpers. And to me, they sound a lot like the angels that are in the Christian Bible. I went from starting over with one outfit, literally just the clothes on my back, and nothing, to being a homeowner and having nice material things. Creator God has blessed me and takes care of my household. I have opportunities to give back to others when I can. I support other people and my children when I can. My youngest has never seen me drunk or high. I have a loving husband, and animals are in my life again. I grew up with cats and dogs, so it's nice to have them around again. I am in grad school, another dream. I have learned more things about addiction in my culture over the years. My healing has gave me an understanding towards the people who hurt me and generational trauma. I work towards understanding, which is a major shift for someone like me. I've been able to travel more, and I appreciate the beauty of nature, which is healing and spiritual to me. Had I quit on my worst day in recovery, I would not be where I'm at today. I often tell myself to muster the strength and determination of Tatanka, or the buffalo as he is known in the English language, who charge the storm, don't look back, but keep moving forward. I keep going like my ancestors did. I also reach out for help and support from my beloved friends and mentors when I need to. Talking to others and getting things off of my chest has been healing for me. And I just want to say a thank you to the women in my life who are cycle breakers, fierce go-getters, scholars, boundary setters, language speakers, knowledge holders, and kind motherers. They don't preach, rather lead by example. And each one of us owes our existence to the courage of an ancestor who dreamt of a lush and vibrant future and whispers quietly to us that it is now our turn to rise to the occasion. Next slide, please. Okahe, in my language, that's a war cry. Find your inner fire. Now be brave and fight for what you love. The elders say that one of Crazy Horse's war cries was Maka ki echela tehani yankelo. Only the earth lasts forever, strong hearts to the front. I was recently asked to define resiliency, and my initial answer was to give an example of a rubber band stretched to its limit and then bouncing back to its shape. Mentally, it means to be realistic, hopeful, emotionally mature, and have a clear view of adversities. We have all overcome things that could have destroyed us but didn't. Instead, we bounced back. Keeping my inner fire lit and strong means practicing self-care to be able to show up for my husband and my children in healthy ways. It means sharing my experiences with others to help give them hope, praying for others, and sharing my healing journey with the Creator God, because I have come to realize that we are all on this earth to help one another. I feel that my fire is at its brightest when I am showing love to others. I am not perfect at it, but like the eagle I am, I swoop back around and do my best to be a good relative. Well, most of the time. Next slide, please. So circular patterns are healing. And this picture on the left is the picture of me and my daughter, the blue and the red dress, at a powwow we went to this summer. It was the first powwow where we danced in our new dresses, and I didn't even know that my cousin had taken this picture of us, but to me, it's one of my favorite pictures because I'm looking at my youngest with admiration because I was so proud of her that day. And then she looks at me with adoration, like in this picture, when I was doing a PSA for MMIW or MMIP, and I was standing against the wall and we were about to leave. And she said, "I want a picture with you." And the whole time, like, I didn't even realize how much she was looking up to me or watching me. And in this picture, the cameraman captured her looking up to me. So I dance for those who can. I dance for the MMIP movement. I dance so that my daughter and grandson have an example to follow. I aspire to have the heart and spirit of the warrior. Next slide, please. So one of the things that has helped me along in my healing journey is going to a naming ceremony. On the picture on the left is my grandpa, Clifford Chunku, and he was working for the Minnesota Historical Society, but he's retired now. And he's actually a doctor, but he doesn't like to be called a doctor. Like, he's a very humble man. So he helped interpret some of the Dakota prisoner of war letters, and he's like a spiritual leader in the Native community, and he's just a great man all around. And in the picture on the right is me, my mom, and my youngest after we had gotten our Indian names. So this summer we had the honor of receiving our Dakota names from my grandpa, Clifford Chunku, who's the oldest male elder in my family. The whole day was a healing day and spiritual event. In the process, I taught myself how to make wasna and cried as I thought about how my ancestors would do this while I have the conveniences of a meat dehydrator. I don't know why I teared up, but it was healing to recognize traditional food. And it was also kind of sad too, because like I'm over 40 and just now learning how to make a food that my ancestors lived on. I carry the name of an ancestor, a descendant of Little Crow. My name is Tate Oshajawi, shining light wind woman, but the deeper meaning can be summed up in saying, I am named after the sun when it is rising and the breeze that comes with it. What a beautiful and healing name to be named after something so simple yet so beautiful. It speaks life into my life. My daughter carries the names of my dad's grandmas, Wiaka Washtewi, pretty feather woman. We were honored to have this ceremony in beautiful South Dakota. We were privileged to sit with our elders and hear stories of the old ways prior to the oppression that occurred. This ceremony was good for my spiritual health. I encourage everyone to utilize cultural healing practices and spend time with your elders because their stories are healing and their presence is healing. Next slide, please. And then in my previous session, I also talked about my dad, who is in active addiction. So relationships with parents who use. In order to heal, I've had to forgive my dad. I keep boundaries with him, and being a substance abuse counselor has taught me how to have boundaries with family members, which hasn't always been easy. Having a parent in active addiction hurts. Take care of yourself. Practice letting go even if it hurts. So my story with my dad is not over with yet. I occasionally talk to him and ask difficult questions. Our relationship isn't perfect, yet I call him every so often to check on him. Last I knew, I was listed as his emergency contact. Family members tried to prepare me for the day that I will get a call saying he's gone. Until then, I can be there for him to try to get to know him. It is good to reach out to help when dealing with these types of family members because it's hard when you want to see them sober, but it's not what reality is. It's tough to accept what others do, but with therapy, Al-Anon, supportive friends and family, you can get through many things that you might struggle with. Those are some of the things that have helped me. I pray often and I've never stopped praying for my dad. Even when I've been angry with him, I still pray for both of my parents that they would be healthy. And letting go helps me so that I don't become overly attached to trying to control an outcome with him. Next slide, please. So positive outlets. Find something healthy that allows you to use your voice. De-stress, get involved in your community. These can be family events. Build a life in recovery that is so beautiful and where addiction looks less appealing, and keep cementing days that take you further away from a life of alcoholism and/or addiction. You need you. Your family would benefit from seeing a healthy you. Last slide, please. So I had a song on here. It was Beyonce's song Survivor. That's my jam whenever like people talk about having like a spirit song that gets you going. So Survivor talks a lot about like just women empowerment, like getting out there, like getting back to being on top when people didn't expect you to be there. Mitakuye Owasi, we are all related. I hope that you find your medicine and take time to find the kind of life where you are content with yourself and your family. We heal by building healthy families, which lead to healthy communities. And I will play a short clip of that song.
Thank you, Listina. That was beautiful. I'm really inspired by what everyone has shared. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of you ladies that have already spoken. So I'm going to take a walk back a little bit and share my healing and connectedness and my parenting journey. So next slide, please. In the past few sessions, I've shared some knowledge about what broke apart my world, and then I shared how this tree of addiction poisoned my family. Last week, I shared some painful memories that were rooted in all of these addictions. Those painful memories could have made me choose a different path, and I chose to heal because I wanted my daughters to learn from me and how to heal themselves in times of pain, sorrow, grief, and uncertainty. For this last session, I will share some coping strategies and some good medicine that I hope inspire the next generation and offer advice to some young parents that are struggling. Next slide, please. So, I like this tree. We've been talking about trees a lot, and this is my story of healing and connectedness, where this image is taken from the generation Red Road. And what I like about it is that it looks at revitalization and it promotes this generational healing that we see today. I like this picture because it shows a picture of the brain in the tree and the heart of the healing tree. I think these are two important organs in our body that is affected by the imbalance of the heart and the mind. due to guilt, shame, alcohol, substance use, relational difficulties, depression, and trauma that we sometimes experience. I want to share some of the protective factors that were around me through my life that I didn't realize until I did this panel. And as I go through the timeline, you will see how I carried my ancestral strength forward. Next slide, please. So here are some pictures again of me as my younger self in the middle. I was raised by some amazing people who gave me my roots. And this was a strength that I did not realize at the time. I credit my grandmother who took my brother and I in. I credit my dad and all the strong women in my life in this little community who took time to nurture me in some way. Once I thought about who those were and looking back at the house that I grew up in and the road that I would walk down to get to my house, it was through my family and my community that I realized that these were protective factors that fostered my well-being. I didn't have every protective factor there, but I did have some. In times of stress and uncertainty, I would always dream of this house and the road that led me to it. It's where I grew up. It's my heart. So some of the protective factors at this age would look like a strong self-identity, personal wellness, some positive self-image, speaking up for oneself, which is self-efficacy. But what I did have was the family connectedness, and I had the community connectedness, and I did have some positive opportunities. So that positive social norming and cultural connectedness, those are protective factors that we would like to see, at any age, but these are the things that I realized that I had going for me at the time. Next slide, please. So when I became a teenager, I really had to look at the strengths that I had going on at the time. And one of the things that I realized was that it was my mother. She showed me how to survive. I mean, if it wasn't the healthiest way, but those experiences showed me important life lessons that shaped who I became. It was through those uncertain times that I knew that I wanted to help others. Others who may be just like me, struggling in the same way. And just knowing that there were people or young ladies my age that didn't get those things. I did realize that at that age that they were struggling in a situation that wasn't healthy for them. So during my freshman and my senior year, I was placed in special education. And it was embarrassing as I got older because I didn't understand why I was there for my freshman year when I lived with my dad. And then whenever I moved back to be with him my senior year, they put me right back in there. And so it made me feel inadequate, of course, and I didn't feel smart enough. But I had this great relationship with the teacher that you see in the photo, and I got to hang out with my best friend, and I reconnected with some of my old classmates, and I really did have the best time in that class. So what that taught me was that it was my self-efficacy. My experiences living with my mother really forced me to watch out for myself. It made me speak up for myself. It made me want to graduate high school. I was my own advocate just to graduate from high school in an uncertain situation. So my biggest accomplishment at that age was just proving to myself that despite all these setbacks, I had the power to persevere. And I had the courage, I had the confidence, and the compassion. It was a really heart-centered community through my school, the people that were around me, and my support system. Next slide, please. This next photo is, as a young lady, I was probably in my 30s before I reached out to, start my educational journey in college. I stumbled a lot. It took me a while to get to this point. I had to fight some depression that I was dealing with, some loneliness, some things that I had not really healed from with my mother, some uncertainty, some substance use issues. But at the same time, I was able to push myself to be better. I really credit myself for having the strength to keep going. I don't know how or where I drew that strength from. I went on to enroll in college, and as a young mother, I met academic professionals who encouraged me to finish my degree, who believed in me at the University of Oklahoma, where I worked to get a tuition waiver. And from there, I met a professor who encouraged me to get my master's degree. And it was through a program. It was called the American Indian Leadership in School Administration. And it paid for my tuition. It provided me a laptop. I had a stipend to complete like 14 hours in a year. And I was so scared that I wasn't smart enough and I wasn't able to, or that I wasn't going to be able to finish or just be accepted by the other people who were in the same program with me. But those same people is why I made it. I credit all the Native men and women who were in the same cohort alongside me in both my undergraduate and graduate. These people, they really supported me. They helped me see my worth and encouraged me to finish my education. Next slide, please. So, once I started my career, I credit my daughters for showing me that I needed to model for them I needed them to show me what I needed to model for them. And walking in 2, sometimes 3 worlds can be difficult, but manageable. Some choices that I had to make were not easy, but I worked at it. I read books, I went to workshops, I attended conferences, I learned about sweat lodges and Native American church, and was able to participate in some of my Sac and Fox ceremonies and just do things that I needed to navigate and provide for them and just show them a healthier way to live. And I also included them in my work so we could stay together. It was a protective factor. And we began healing together through this process and learned how to be a family who supports one another and not to run away from our responsibilities, but to self-regulate or be present in that moment. Next slide. I also credit my companion, my best friend Corey, who helped me work through some of the most painful experiences of my life. He supports me, he listens to me and tries to help me. He loves me for me and never gives up on me. And this is the most important thing for me, was that he taught me how to hug people and really mean it. My family and I, we kind of giggle about it now because, he was a hugger and we're not huggers. And he's like the hugger whisperer now, because in so many families, Native families, I guess, or maybe just my family, people really just didn't hug. And it was just a pat here. And, I had to really think about why that was. And once I realized, this could be a trauma response, this could be for any reason, I learned how to work through that. And he really taught me how to be open to that. He's a great father figure for my daughters, and he treats them like his own. And again, I learned to love and trust again, but it's taken a long time, so I'm really thankful for his patience. Next slide. So through all my hardships, the pain, the grief, I've been able to bring my family with me and show them that there is another way. I've opened doors, I've provided experiences, I've supported, I've also made lifelong friends and have brought them into my work. And we get to have these amazing experiences together. We heal together. It's been a joy to stand with all of them, and it's been a blessing to stand with all of you through telling my story. Next slide. So I have come full circle with my family parenting tree. I went back 3 generations to see where I came from, and it felt a little like I was spending time with my grandparents. It was just taking the time to tell my story and to honor their memory. I encourage all of you to take this time, the same journey that we went on, and tell your story. It takes courage, but I hope that we have given you some strength to stand in your power. All of this has been to help the next generation and share with you our hearts, our courage, our pains, our sorrows. But we want you to take this with you and heal, because if we're all heal, what is the term? It's like hurt people, but healed people heal people. And the more people we heal, the better off our world will be. So, Kadepi, thank you. And I will pass it on to Ronnie.
Thank you, Melanie. Well, we meet again. We come full circle, as Melanie said. This is session 4, and you've gone on some pretty amazing journeys with all of us. So I'm going to I've been referencing 2 studies throughout these 4 sessions. And we're going to go back, and they seem really simple, but they're extremely difficult. So with that being said, Liz, first slide, please. Native American parenting practices and philosophies. And I revamped these just a little bit. The meaning is still the same. I just changed the wording just a little bit. And this is my advice for everyone who is watching and may be watching in the future. Now, I affectionately use the term hardhead. One of my presentations is the absolute true story of a Native American hardhead, and that was me. And it took me 2 felony convictions to kind of grasp these 4 little principles and practices right here. And my first one is your kids come first. Number 1, your kids come first. It sounds so easy. Yeah, my kids always come first. I will do anything for them. But when I finally got honest with myself, and I'm like, okay, no, that wasn't true. That's not the way I lived, even though I was raised that way. And that's one of the philosophies and teachings that was instilled in me at a young age. I just didn't know how to do it. Life and circumstances take us in many directions and pull us all kinds of ways, and we lose our paths. So try to make your children the priority that they deserve. Number 2, your children should enjoy their childhood. Now, as I sat and I listened to everybody's stories throughout these 4 Fridays, we've gone through some pretty traumatic and horrific events, but I always found a little golden nugget in each story that was being told, from Raquel's Cuban grandparents to Melanie's street in Kansas to whatever it was. There was always something there that made our childhood very, very special. A lot of us did not have conventional childhoods. We didn't grow up with a nuclear family, 2.5 kids with mom and dad. We were raised in very different circumstances. I was raised primarily by my grandmother, but I enjoyed my childhood. I grew up in Elgin out there in Richard Spur, which is in Southeast Oklahoma. And I loved just running around riding, and it was really the country back then. It's not so anymore. It's a lot more populated. Watch your kids closely. They grow up fast. A lot of us have missed years with our kids. We will never be able to get those years back. And I enjoy watching my grandkids now, and I am paying extra close attention to them that I didn't do with my biological kids. So I am taking that forward and making sure that they have the grandparent that they deserve to have. Number 4, there should be no drinking or drug use in your home. Drugs and alcohol, the deadliest effects of colonization that we have faced. It's just, I can't imagine how many people have been devastated by drugs and alcohol. And our stories are just a small sample of what is happening in Indian country, coast to coast. It's prevalent, and it is definitely didn't have to be that way. This study was published in the Journal of Child and Family Study in 2021, and it is by McKinley et al. So if you want to take a look at that, you can Google it and pull it up. Next slide, Liz. Thank you. She's the center of my life, the one that keeps me going, the roles and expectations of Native American women. And the way this was phrased with the mothers now, I inserted grandmothers, and now I am taking this full circle to include parents. Our parents, we as parents, we should always know what to do. We should always at least have an answer. We may not have the right answer, but we should at least try to figure things out. And if we do not know what is happening with our kids, then we should be wise enough to go and ask somebody who may be able to provide us in the right direction. Do not be afraid to ever ask for help. This is for my male individuals or attendees who may be watching. We as males don't want to ask for help. We want to be bravado, and we want to make sure that we know how to do things well. That could be our weakness. So always strive to be the caretaker that your kids deserve to have. Parents are the center of the family, and we should be excellent role models. Now, that wasn't always true for our panelists, but we have come full circle. And now every story that I watch, we are all proud to be the role models. And I've heard it before several times. My children, my youngest, have not seen me drunk or alcohol. My grandkids have not seen me drunk or high. And I can honestly say that too. I am in that group with my panelist here, that my grandkids have never seen me drink, or they've never seen me smoke any weed, if they've never seen me doing any kind of drugs. So we are all being excellent role models, and I encourage everybody else to also. Now, historically, women prioritize the family over their own wants and desires. And in this study, and this was done by Liddell et al., and it was published in 2020. In his research, he found that recently, Native American women prioritize the family over their own economic and educational aspirations. I have seen my panelists who have done this, and now they are fulfilling their economic and educational aspirations. I hear degrees being received, going to graduate school. Congratulations. So I encourage everybody that may be viewing and watching, chase your dreams, see what may happen. I also am a late bloomer to the academic field. I wished I had done this in my early 20s. I wished I had gotten a little bit smarter then, but it took me a little while to figure things out. So I encourage everybody, if you want to be an adult learner, don't be scared. Go and do it. I found out that all I had to do was go sit in the classroom and take a few notes, and that was all I had to do, and I passed tests. And I was like, wow, I can do this. So decolonizing norms. Once again, number 4, drugs and alcohol should not be prevalent in our households. And back to number 3, we as men, Native American men, we were the protectors and the providers of our family. Nowhere in our history did drugs and alcohol become my priority until we had the European contact. I do an exercise with my Native groups, and I ask them to write down what it meant to be a Native male historically, and then what it meant to be Native female historically and currently. And I can tell you with certainty that every time I've done this exercise, and I've done it numerous times over 15, 20 years, nobody has ever listed drugs and alcohol as the priority or a role that they were taught or learned or that we should aspire to be. So please leave drugs and alcohol out of the home. Next slide, please. Liz, thank you. Honor your obligations. If you give your word, you better keep it. Now, this is story time. Took me a long time to figure this one out. When I was released from prison in 2006, and I had been incarcerated for 5.5 years, my oldest was 13 when I was incarcerated. He was 18 when I was released. My addictive thinking was still kind of prevalent there, because once I got out, I wanted everything back to the way it was. I wanted the relationship back. I wanted everything back. I wanted the nice job. I wanted the house. I wanted all of this stuff fixed. And it took time. And Raquel said it very eloquently. It takes time. I wanted it on my time, but it was not to be. I had to wait for the reconnection on his time. So when I was released in 2006, he was 18. I didn't see him again for 7 more years. So he was about 23 when I saw him again. So when I got out, I started writing, text and sending phone calls and going, I'm out now, I'm doing good. Is it okay we get together? He's going, no, not right now, Dad. No, it's okay. I'm in school now. There was always something. And I'm like, okay. I understand. I said, so when you're ready to reconnect, you let me know and I will have you a plane ticket ready and waiting. You just let me know when, where you want to fly out, how long you want to be, and I'll have it for you. So in Thanksgiving of 2014, 15, somewhere in there, I get the phone call and he goes, Dad, I want to come down. I'm like, okay, give me your plans. And he said, this is it. I'm like, all right. So the minute he hung up, I was online connecting, and I called him back in about maybe 5-10 minutes. And I go, okay, here's your confirmation number. Here's your ticket. Here's your itinerary. Now, when I tell this story to my group members, I'm like, what would have happened if I did not do that for him? What would have happened when he said, I'm ready to come down, and I didn't do it? It would have been another X amount of years before we reconnected, because I would not have earned his trust. So next slide, please, Liz. If you're going to give your word, you better honor it. The picture's up on the left. He was just a little bit older when I got locked up. So this is about first, second grade. He was in 5th or 6th when I got locked up. And that second picture on the left is when we seen each other for the first time. Now, I could get teary-eyed like everybody else, because there's years and a gap there that was like, wow. When I was at the airport waiting for him to come off, I kept looking, is that him? Is that him? Is that him? And I seen everybody coming. And when I seen him, I was like, okay, okie doke. Now I see. The middle picture, we were at Denver March this year. That's my younger brother. And he wanted to dance. So I was like, okay, let's go up to Denver March. The picture on the right, that was taken just last night at the Comanche Nation Fair. And I got to give a shout out to Raquel, Auntie Raquel, because you can't see it because his fan is hiding it, but the concho belt that he's got on, Raquel made it for him. And the picture on the left over here, the bottom right, that's my bottom left. That's my mom. That is Raquel's honey, Donnie, right there. Raquel would have been in the picture, but we were waiting for her and she was late to get there. She was not in time. And then that's my son and our brother, Martin, our native brother, Martin, who is our native guru. Aaron entered the arena for the first time last night. So it was joyful, tearful, happy, all wrapped up together. Now, would Raquel, Donnie, myself, any of us been able to witness something like this had we still been living our our crazy lives? No, no. And it took us all years and years of growth and learning to be able to witness something like that. So my next slide, Liz, please. I always end, and I love rock and roll. I am from the late 70s and the 80s, and one of my favorite songs by Rod Stewart is Every Picture Tells a Story, don't it? I encourage you to go listen to it. And you got to turn it up real loud if you're going to listen to it. So, what stories do your pictures tell? And I left it a blank there. And from all of my panelists, I've seen some amazing stories. I've seen some amazing photos. I've seen majority of the good times. There's a few of the bad ones, but when we're doing the bad deeds, there's not too many pictures from back then. But yeah, congratulations to everybody. And I just want to thank you for spending your Friday afternoons with us and allowing us to share what we've gone through and how we've learned and what we can do to help prevent anyone from going through similar circumstances. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ronalda.
Thank you so much, Ronnie, and for all the other participants and sharing. And I know it takes an incredible courage and strength to do what you're doing. This is my final piece, and hopefully I can help you just to figure out some of the things that you're going through. And so I want to start with this quote. Next slide. It says, "So never be afraid. Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice, lying and greed." This particular quote became very powerful to me as I started advocating for our children with disabilities. But what happened and encouraged me on this road was my mother. I recall when I was in high school and my senior year, and you know how you raise all this money for prom. Well, the principal called myself in because I was student council president and the president of our senior class in to speak with us. And the principal told us we could not have a prom this year. And we were surprised, but we really didn't say anything in front of him because he said there was too much drinking going on. The teachers don't want to be chaperones. So we're just going to call off the prom. So he thought with his authoritativeness that this was it and it was done. Well, I went to my mother and I told her what was going on. And even though my mother, through all the years of her working, she only came to 2 of my basketball games. She was always busy. When I told her about this, she went to her friends and went to the community members, organized them, got them together, and we went to a meeting with the principal. And she specifically told the principal, all these people here, these parents, they'll be the chaperones. We'll make sure the prom's going on. We'll be responsible. So it was then I realized that my mother was there for me. And she was willing to do whatever was needed so I could have a prom, but also to just speak up. And that's why this quote is so important. And the reason why I became this advocate within education, because I seen my mother, she was a dorm manager in the BIE, and I always saw her try to speak up, but her job was always on the line. She didn't have a degree. She was not educated, and she would always continue to work. But I knew then that I was going to take on the Bureau. I was going to do what was ever needed with educators when they weren't doing the right thing. And so that became my life goal as I have pursued and continued on. Next slide. So I want to share with you in my journey of trying to find a voice, but my spiritual connectedness to not only the Creator has been my life support. Even in the church where my mother attended, and she tried to push religion, and I did follow it for a while because it was an answer for these critical times and the abuse that was going on in my home. And then when I finally left the church, that was probably in about 2004 or 5, I started to really look at my family history. And with that, my grandmother who died in 2014, and this poem wasn't written until 2018, but poetry became my means and to spiritually connect with those who either have passed, my ancestors. And I don't know, I just find this amazing connectedness in my spiritual way of not only delivering, but how do I create this connectedness with my past, but also create a path in the future. So this was one of the poems I wrote for my grandmother, Mary Beta, and it's called The Fragrance of Beauty. It says, in this time, it is times like this we remember the place where she once stood, her smile, her laughter, her song, for there's an air of divine presence, her beauty radiant and pure. We often don't understand the journeys most take, but to have her return to the place she called home, to the protection of so many, we sit with this divine beauty. Her life a glimpse of struggle, but also filled with genuine hope. She leaves a fragrance of beauty to comfort us, to make us laugh, to bring a sense it will be all right. Remember her fragrance, for at this moment she stands a pillar of strength. She will be forever. She now stands as the wind encircles her, forming her to be all she needs to. For her footprints are embedded in every living soul. She will forever be remembered as she walks the fragrance of beauty. So this is one of the poems I wrote as I sit in remembrance of so many women and the struggles. And the next slide, please. Poetry has been my saving grace. It's been where I put my emotions. It's where I am able to find words to figure out and to communicate what is going on deep inside me. Now, this one I wrote called Beauty. It's about my mother, and those of you who know her journey. She was not only abused, but by my father, and she endured so much going to boarding school and never having a voice in her own life. But there were times we would sit and she could never tell me about her pain. So one day I just sat with her picture in front of me like I was talking to her. And I just asked Creator, show me, what is she saying? So this poem was birthed. She sits patiently, intently. Why am I here? This doesn't matter. I am no one, but I speak. The words bring me to a place so deep in my soul, buried, covered by hardship, traumatic experiences, and separation. This place of loneliness, where I question at times, at first so painful, and now a part of me, separating the situations at this moment. The relentless bombarding of words, beatings, cries, never going back to this place where beauty once resided. I continue on in my conversations, telling, repeating, and noticing the hardness being lifted, stronger with each word, with each emotion, and with each cry. This heavy blanket, which has tried its best to keep me, but through time, shredded and no longer holding me. May I see with each passing experience, letting those in who understand, for the young woman who left so long ago. Maybe my scars are becoming tangents of beauty, slowly coming together to make me whole. The search has ended with each passing expression. I am becoming whole. I have always been beauty. It is all around me. I am beauty. I will walk for this journey as mine. I wrote that May 26, 2016. I gave it to her just last year for her birthday. A lot of my poems are all, I have a little email address. As I get them, I just stuff them in there and I'll pull them out when needs be. And hopefully this is one way I have found the way to look at not only the traumatic experiences that I have lived, but it's also a way of putting it on paper and releasing it, not only for myself, but for my mother. And I would hope, and this is a picture of her when we were together for 7 months. She had to have surgery. She's a diabetic and had to have her toes amputated. So she was with me. And during that time, after I was ready to graduate out of grad school, I had one more class to take, but then her health came in jeopardy. So I had to leave it. I wanted to apply to law school, but I said, no, this takes priority. But during that time, we found our healing and what it took to not only move forward, but to also be the daughter she needed, which, in her time of need. Next slide. Now, this is my daughter, Shandine, and I could pull out all my poems I wrote for my kids, and they are my pride and joy. They have taught me to be a better mother. They have taught me to have communication at all times, to always have an open door. And I really wanted to show them because of what the long walk and boarding school did in breaking up that relationship between parent and child, that I would always be there. And when my ex-husband and I separated, he went his way, but I just made sure that they were going to live with me, that I was going to do what I needed to, and I was not going to go away, despite how hard it became to do it alone. I just knew that they were always going to be part of my life. And they still are, despite them being 30, 29, and 26. This picture was taken of my daughter at UNM just this past May. She won the prestigious Zimmerman Award. Scott Momaday is one of the carriers, and Joy Harjo and Tony Hillerman, but Harjo and Scott Momaday are the only other Native Americans. And so she got this award at 29 from the University of New Mexico. But this poem I wrote for her when she's a film director and writer and editor, and right now her current film, Long Life of Ladies, has a good shot of being nominated for Academy Award. And this poem was written for her on her first short film called Mud. And she was really going through a hard time. So I sent her this poem, Your Face. As I draw upon the first moment when I saw your face, when I really saw you, the incredible light which radiated, your smile, so little, so graceful, so pure. I recall the first time you let me know your joy, your spirit so willing to teach, your spirit so willing to share, and your spirit so willing to love. So small and intricate, you were ready to be my teacher. I would sit patiently, watching, listening, and encompassing your beauty, which would be a draw like no other. I share this in this form, for innately those who watch and listen know you are exactly where you're intended, because it was such when your face entered the world. Keep this moment, know this moment, for it is what many moments will reveal. Your plan, your purpose, your destiny. Move, my daughter, in what you are intended. Move with the universe, which birthed you into this physical world. You are this moment because your face said so. And that's her little picture of her when she was only 2 weeks old. So poetry has been this piece of my releasing these emotions by me figuring out how these emotions work so I can no longer carry them and let them go. And hopefully one day I hope to share all of these, because it's just a way of looking at how I heal and why I heal. Because if I can express these words for others, then it's one to also know that they could see themselves. My mother, when she got that poem that I read before, no one ever wrote her those kind of words before. But I wanted her to feel her beauty in just the same way as my daughter. For a Navajo, it's beauty before you, beauty behind you, and beauty above you and below you, and beauty all around. It's this span of your arms in this circle as you lay it, wide and high. That's all we own. We don't know anything outside of that circle. So just remember that within you, in this sphere that's just around you, that's all you have control over. There's no thing to, you don't have to worry about other things, about what's beyond that, about what other people think. But it's when to transition your mind. The next slide. So my healing path and what I have learned. Let's take a pause. Sit in the in-between spaces, because the man-made world has generated and told us by labels, by changing of our names, by dictating policies and laws to force us to be what they want. Close that world off for a moment. Go to the natural world, the mountains, the sky, the trees, and those around. And there is those two worlds. But your role is to figure out, how do I move in the in-between spaces and where the pause is? When you learn how to do that, you're not defined by the physical world, the one this man has created, or the spiritual world, but it is still yours, because you are of the earth. But learn to move in the pause, in between. And that's where you'll find that nothing holds you. You determine your own destination. Because when you can identify alcoholism and the path, if you can identify that, oh, this came down the line from my ancestors, this is how it's residing in my life, then figure out, is that part of what I did? Or is it a generation of a cycle that's being instilled on me? How do I break it? Know where you come from, your family history, just what we've been doing around here, just showing the path of what a history, and then relating it to all of these laws and policies and how that was generated. And, and looking at where you are currently. Your children don't need the same future, but it's up to you to decide, will I remove those tumbleweeds, or am I going to keep going around them as they get bigger and bigger? Or am I going to start removing them? The other is grasp a vision. If you heard my story, I was a very angry girl, and being the oldest in the family and being this tall person who could push my power on people. And then when my dad left me, and I've often felt that I had to protect my little sisters, protect my mother, and I fought for them. And I learned through my own height and how big I was that I could fight men too. And it was my dad's leaving that put this responsibility on me. As small as I was, and as I kept growing up, I became very angry. So as I started my advocacy for children, I realized that the energy that it took had to be turned into something else. So that's when I grasped a vision for my life. And not growing up traditional, not growing up in the church, I just became seriously honest with the Creator, and just one day sat in my living room and said, you're going to tell me I have these clans. The church says I shouldn't. They have all these things. And I said, I'm going to sit with you. I'll lie flat on my face till I figure out what is my vision. And I can tell you, it was revealed. But also remember to pick up the pieces and restore yourself. So many of us are shattered, but I often told this to my daughter and my sons. When that world tears you up, pick up the pieces, whether it's put them inside a bowl. And I said, and pick them up, because you can't do the work when you're broken up. You get burned out. So take those pieces and restore it. This is where you need to go back to what your name means, where your clans are, where your family is from, who are your family, how have they become resilient, and what have they overcome. Learn that for yourself. Learn who you are. Your name is vital. Your name and where you're from, your middle name. Maybe it's an Indian name. Find out what it means. My 3 children have both Navajo and Jewish names, and they're every bit their names. And remember, my grandfather's ways are my ways. Don't, try and figure out. That's one thing spiritually that I've learned with this connection with ancestors. They're always there, and they're constantly remind me, this is where you got to go. This is what you got to do. And I'm very connected to them. And there are those places you can go to connect. And then I have faced so much, but I know I'm beauty. And I know have had to learn to say that I am beautiful despite what I've been through. And as you've heard those poems, I talk a lot about beauty because I want the women who have raised me, despite what they've been through by men. And I'm not putting down men in general, but I want them to know that they are very vital and very resilient, and they're beautiful to be in my life, and I have learned from them. So that last piece about that beauty way prayer, beauty above me, beauty below me, behind me, in front of me, and all around me. This is where I am. And this is my sacred space and what has taught me to overcome. And it's something that I've always fought because I never really wanted to be Navajo because I didn't know the language. And I was always told, if you don't know the language, you're not Navajo. But I had to prove it wrong because my grandparents are part of that rich culture and who fought for me to be there just as much as anybody else. Find your place, resonate with who you are. But this is my story, and these people that I've just revealed to you have brought me exactly where I am today. My children have always been my teachers. They've shown me along this path how to be vulnerable, how to sit in a circle when we sit there and talk with one another. You know, the other night I bought tickets for us to all go to the Dark Knight because movies are our thing, and all of my kids are in the film industry. That we went to go see the Dark Knight, and I wanted to resonate with 14 years ago when we first went and saw that movie. And my kids love it. That's how we come together. That's our inspiration. And when we gather to celebrate, we're here, and animals have been a big part of my world too. I've got one dog right now. I just lost a dog 2 months ago. And then before that, in 2016, I had a really good dog that was with the kids for the time we transitioned here to Albuquerque. He was our protector. And many animals in your life are your protectors. Then they're the speakers of the spirit world in your life. And they're generating these messages and stories for you to learn from. But the world and the animal kingdom and the world in itself has been my teacher. I have been alone predominantly all the time because of this spiritual awareness. And many times when my mother and the church try to hush me, but I didn't know. But now I am using this gift for the good. And I pray as I leave you all, find that place. Who are you sincerely? Fight those labels that have been given to you because it is not who you are. Don't be defined by those things. Change your story or be the truth that needs to set you free. Our truths can literally set us free. I thank you for the opportunity. I thank you for this time, and be blessed and move in your beauty. Thank you. That's me when I was a baby.
Wow. I don't know about you guys, but I had a tissue in the hand. Let's take some time for questions and answers. I know I have a couple of questions, but I wanted to allow the audience to ask any of our panelists today any questions that they may have. If you do, just go ahead and speak up. What people are thinking. You could also, if you don't want to speak up, guys, you could put your questions in the chat. I do have something that was on my mind when you guys were speaking today. I've always struggled with the fact that knowing that some of you have been in prison and may have misdemeanors or even felonies, I've always struggled with job searches, not for me personally, but you know, how people, when they come out of prison, you're so limited with everything and with starting your life over. And I think I want to hear from one of you guys about how you did that, how you overcame that, how you even passed background checks, because today you can't even find a job. The first thing they want to do is a background check. And me personally, that's one thing that I've always felt like we should change, because if you've done your time, you've done your time. And if you've done your time, then your background should be erased. But that's just me. I'm not a politician. I can't make those changes. But if somebody can maybe answer that, how was it like with you getting to where you are today? Because now every one of you guys are professionals. You're sitting here doing a panel discussion, for a live audience today. So can one of you jump in and kind of tell me your path during that? Ronnie, I know that you've got your mic off, so I'm gonna let you go.
Well, I was going to say, does anybody want to jump in there first, or do you want? I can start. For me, it was humbling in that I had to be completely honest with everybody, and I still am. I mean, I'm an open book, and sometimes I always say my filter's broken because I say things that I shouldn't, but I am completely honest that what you see is what you get. But it wasn't always so. When I first got out, I had to take what was available, and I was always honest and upfront. I just got out of prison. Please don't judge me by what that part of my life indicates, because future behavior is not always an indicator of past behavior, is not always a perfect indicator of future behavior. We change and we grow.
Absolutely.
And I tell everybody that's in similar circumstances, in the history of everybody looking for a job, if you honestly look, somebody's going to take a chance on you. Now, this is one felon to another when I'm talking. When somebody gives you that chance, you better make sure you do the best job you can, because not only are you carrying your weight, but you're carrying all the felons coming behind you. So if you mess up, the next person that comes up that may be a felon, they're going to go, well, I tried Ronnie and he was like you, so I'm not going to take my chance on you. So you start changing everybody's past by changing yours. It wasn't always fun and happy times, because there are those, even in our own tribes, and Raquel will attest to this. What do you have those convicted felons doing, running that drug program? Well, who better? Do they want somebody like us, or do they want somebody judgmental like you? I don't know. But, our own people were always the worst individuals in our path sometimes. But long story short, somebody will take a chance, so make sure you do a good job.
I have a question. Did it make your journey harder? Were you passed up a lot for roles that you really wanted because of that?
Yes. It was limiting in some of the opportunities that I felt comfortable wanting to go after. I think we're all challenged sometimes in our endeavors, and to this day, I mean, I've been out 20 some odd years now and done really well. And there are still those that want to go, but wait, look what you did. And I'm going, okay, well, no, but look what's going on now. No, but wait, look what you did. I'm like, okay, so I know I can't associate with you, but thank you for your input, and I hope the best for you.
Yep. Thank you, Ronnie. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add. So for me, it was a struggle to find a good paying job when I got out because of my felony conviction. And I have more than one felony on my record and a host of misdemeanors. So there was always that added component of when they go to do a background check, or you sign the papers to do a background check. It was like, am I going to get the job? Are they going to pass me up? And for most of the jobs they did, I struggled for a while. I struggled making $7.25 an hour until I got tired of it and decided to go back to school. And even that was a process. Like, am I going to be able to afford school? Is school going to accept me? Can I get my counseling license with my felony conviction? And what kind of jobs are there going to be for me on the other side? So all of that are key components, like when you go to find a job, and even in the interview process, when they ask you, have you ever been convicted of a felony, or tell me about your felony. So I've had to learn how to reframe those types of answers to where they come off as a positive asset. Like, yes, I'm glad that I was convicted, I was responsible, and I paid my dues, and that's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because it put me on the path to where I'm at today. So But, overall, like today, it does still add a component, like if I wanted to maybe go work for a jail or some other place, like they're probably not gonna hire me. So I don't know, for me, it can still be a barrier, but I also believe that wherever I'm meant to be, I will be. And there's some doors that have been open that I didn't think would open. So it's kind of like taking a gamble. You just have to be honest with them and tell them the truth and tell them your story. And sometimes people will overlook it. And sometimes, like Ronnie said, they're going to be judgmental, or they may bring up your past or ask you weird or obnoxious questions about things. And I don't know, I've just kind of learned to skirt around those, or just to be like, I just don't feel like talking about it right now, because sometimes people's motives aren't like, oh, I want to know so I can help other people. Sometimes it's just they want the tea, they want to drink your tea. So you just kind of have to learn who's your friend and who's like just trying to stir the pot.
Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I can comment on that. One thing that Lestina said earlier, sometimes we talk ourselves out of it, being confident in ourselves. I think a lot of that is that self-doubt that we have. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to have that position. I need to apply at a fast food place because I don't think I'm not worthy enough to do what I really want. When you're working through your recovery, I think it's really good and beneficial to work with someone to find out what your strengths are. What is it that you want to do? What are you good at? What skills do you have to really try to find out, well, maybe if you want to become, let's just say, a lawyer at some point, then maybe where can I start? Where can I start today? Where can I start to lead to that journey and to build those skills as I'm going through? For me, in my first job when I was out, I knew I didn't want to work at a grocery store. I didn't want to work at certain restaurants. Alcoholism was my big thing. That was my drug of choice. So I knew that wouldn't be a good thing for me. So I chose, I always like being around different salons. So I chose to go and work as a customer service in a salon. And I was just completely honest and upfront with the people that interviewed me, probably more so than I should have been, just because that was the first time I sat down with people and just it all came out. And honestly, my response from them was really good. They said, I have never had anybody come in here before and be as honest as you are. I am absolutely willing to give you a chance. And they did. And I worked there for a very long time. And even to this day, if they are completely short, the owners will call me and say, hey, are you busy? Can you just come in and, do different things, like if they have an event or something. But I mean, it's those relationships. I feel like honesty is key in everything that we do in our life moving forward. We had so many things, or I could speak for myself. I had so many things in my past, and now I just want to be completely transparent.
It's who you are, Cynthia.
Yeah.
It's part of your road that you had to take to get here today. So there's nothing to be ashamed of it. It was your road to where you are. So I could see it being myself going in there, especially for the first time, not wanting to talk about it, not wanting to disclose that, and sugarcoating it as much as I can. I'm hoping that this is one thing that we might can change one day, because I know when you work with tribal nations, the first thing they want to do is that federal background check, and we're losing a lot of good employees because of this. And to me, it's one of those systemic racism. You're automatically, before they even see you, talk to you, that's one of their questions that they ask. So that's when you guys were talking, I was like, you know what, I bet that they've experienced this before, so I had to ask. So thank you for that, for sharing. And I would absolutely hire every single one of you in a heartbeat, because you're beautiful people, you're doing great work. But I think you're all where you need to be today. Unless anybody else have questions, we only have a few minutes. I do want to again thank the panelists. I was crying the whole time you were speaking because everything, each one of your stories just resonated with me and my background so much. And I love you all for being so transparent and honest. Again, I think all of these sessions our goal was to help our Native people do better, let go of this guilt and the shame and the anger and realize that we have to do better for our children. And not only that, realize this was all almost a setup from the beginning to make us fail. Do you know? So we need to realize that and jump over that and let's do better for our kids and their kids. Your stories were beautiful. Again, I'm getting ready to cry. Each one of you are very special, and I just thank you for everything that you've done for our organization and for telling your stories today. Again, guys, if you're on that healing path, if you need help, please talk about it. Talk to somebody. Go get help. People love you no matter where you're at in your life, where you're at in your journey, all the mistakes you've made. I guarantee you have somebody out there that still loves you no matter what you've done. I do also want to recognize something that I think Ronnie might have brought up, was that you thought when you got out that time was going to start over again where you left off. And that is so true, that because I've seen that, whereas with people in my life that's come back, they thought, oh, things were going to be good, great, just like that from the get-go. And it's not like that. It's not on your time. It's on their time, because they also have their own journey that they need to heal and forgive before they can go forward. So please remember that when you're on your healing journey. Just thank you guys. This was beautiful. If we've changed one person's life today, I am satisfied. That was what we were here to do, is just know your worth, let go of the past, know you could do this, find your vision. Each one of these people here, they had a vision. And once they realized it, they took all that negativity and they shifted it into positivity to make it to where they wanted to go. Please do that for yourself. Do it for your kids. Do it for your parents. Do it for our Native people. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you again, panelists. Much love to you all. Thank you.